Good evening, everyone. We will call the City Council meeting to order for October 1, 2012. First order of business is the roll call. Charlene?
Sasso. Nordstrom. Scott. Clayton. Peterson. Doyle. Lewis. Roberts. Wright. Laurenti. We have quorum.
Thank you. Next order of business is our invocation. I do not see our invocator, so I'd like to recognize Jared Strong, who's agreed to be our backup tonight. Everyone, please rise.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the privilege we have to be a part of this incredible city. We pray your blessings over the leadership of this city, over the council and the mayor and everyone who leads in departments. We pray your wisdom over them. And as decisions are made tonight, we pray that, God, you will lead and guide them. Lord, we pray protection over the city and all those who serve, and we pray that your hand would be upon us as we look to our future. In Jesus' name, amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next order of business is adoption of the agenda. We do have an item 3B, and it's on some of the printed agendas. I'm not sure it's on all of the printed agendas, but I'll read it. It's Rapid City Library Foundation for a special event, wine and malt beverage license for an event scheduled for October 27 at the Rapid City Public Library, 610 Quincy, and this would be under the set for hearings for October 15. So that would be item 3B. Do you have any other items to add to the agenda? We'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add an item, I think, probably under Public Works regarding discussion of the traffic issue at Corral Drive School.
Okay. We'll call that item 59C, traffic issue at Corral Drive School. Any other items? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with the additions noted? Motion by Doyle, second by Clayton. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We now have item number 1, World Habitat Day proclamation. If Deanna Dar from Habitat for Humanity could meet me down front. Habitat for Humanity has been important to our community for a very long time, and as an annual tradition, we join with them in recognizing World Habitat Day. So I have an executive proclamation. Whereas the first Monday of October is designated as World Habitat Day, a day to call attention to the dire need for affordable and livable housing for all. And whereas each person touched by Habitat for Humanity, whether a homeowner, volunteer, or supporter, becomes a force of change and a link in the chain of real solutions to the problem of inadequate housing. And whereas, in recognition of World Habitat Day on October 1, 2012, Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity will address the lack of decent housing around the world, including the need for affordable and livable housing in the Black Hills. And whereas, we acknowledge this year's theme, many homes, one community, and the recognition that only together are we a community. Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity will continue to build simple, decent, affordable housing for hardworking families in the Black Hills. Now, therefore, I, Sam Quaker, Mayor of Rapid City, and the Rapid City Common Council do hereby proclaim October 1, 2012 as World Habitat Day in Rapid City, and I ask all citizens to join us in saluting the founders and leaders of this organization for their vision and determination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for the proclamation. My name is Deanna Dar. I'm the Resource Development Coordinator at Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity, and it is World Habitat Day. It's United Nations Day set aside to draw attention to the need for adequate housing. In fact, 1.6 billion people in the world are living in poverty housing. So at Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanity, we're working really hard on a local solution, and we really appreciate your commitment to it. Thank you.
Next order of business is an executive session. Allison, our Assistant City Attorney, if you could please state the reason. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Wright and a second by Nordstrom to go into executive session. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
We have a motion by Scott, second by Peterson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, Amanda, would you read this into the record for us?
Authorized to make an offer of employment for Compass Staff Auditor position at grade 17, step 3, and I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Scott
Step C.
and a second by Lewis. Grade 17, step C. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. General public comment. Now is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And we will first recognize Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Congratulations to Habitat on all the work that they do, but it's also October 1st, which means that it's National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I just want to at least highlight and shine a little light on the over 230,000 women that had breast cancer last year in this country, 57,000 women that had invasive breast cancer surgery or operations last year, and the over 2,000 men that contracted breast cancer. And I think that the way that we continue to decrease that number is by education and awareness. And since this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I talked with the mayor a couple weeks ago, and just would ask the council and the city, the formal structure of the city, to think of ways that maybe you can do a proclamation this month to shine the light on it. Not asking to allocate any funds or anything, but I think once the city is at the table, that people around the community really sit up and listen. So I would just ask that the city consider a proclamation, consider some way of maybe including the staff in that, to have Wear Pink Day or something sometime this month, just to continue to shine the light on this ugly, ugly disease, and not just breast cancer, but all forms of cancer. But the way that we highlight that this month is through breast cancer awareness. This awareness is really about honoring survival, determination, and compassion for those who are fighting breast cancer. And I would just urge you to take some sort of steps, and I think it's our collective responsibility just to continue to create avenues whereby people can have intelligent, honest, and compassionate discussion about breast cancer and all forms of cancer for that matter. I don't think I'm probably going out on a limb to say this, but I think that the vast majority of us in here have either been touched by it personally or had a family member or a close friend that has had cancer over the years. So just if the city could think, the formal structure of the city could think of a way that you could incorporate something into the culture of what it is that you do every single day down here at City Hall. So thank you for the time. I have stickers for everyone. I'll leave a roll with Charlene, and I just thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm, and I would just like to make a comment on that. I want to thank you for coming forward. You know, this touches a personal chord with me. It will be, in just a few weeks, it'll be 5 years since my little sister Bonnie passed away of cancer, and it wasn't breast cancer, but it was awful, and for our family to experience that, and it is something that touches many families. This weekend, Amanda Scott from our council and also one of our employees from the planning department are going to appear for the mayor's walk, the breast cancer walk, and representing the city there. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
We have another general public comment item, and we'll recognize Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. I'm going to start by saying I'm not going to name any employees' names, so you don't need to worry about gaveling me down as I go on. There was a very disturbing event that took place last spring where there was an employee grievance filed against the mayor. Since this employee's direct supervisor was also named, they couldn't deliver that grievance to them. There was no policy. So they delivered to me as the president of the council. Once again, there was no policy. I didn't know what to do with it either. So I made a decision and delivered it to the mayor and the city attorney. I hope it was the right thing to do, but once again, there was no policy. Now, in this particular case, there was also no policy on how to deal with the grievance, not just how to present it. So the mayor dealt with the grievance against himself, kind of like the wolf guarding the hen house. Didn't seem right to me at the time. So on June 4th, I made a motion that was voted on and passed by this council. And the motion basically was for the mayor to direct staff to develop a policy to refer employee grievances against the mayor to a third party and for it to be presented at the July 16th, 2012 council meeting. That was voted on and passed. It was part of one of the last items of the night. It was part of the bill list, actually. I can't find where this has ever been done. Can't find where it was ever brought forward. Several of the other items that were done were brought forward at other times. They weren't brought forward collectively on July 16th. Some were brought forth at Legal and Finance or whatever. But this one, I cannot find that policy on how to deal with a grievance against the mayor has been set forth. There's nothing in action to deal with it. So I guess my question is, has it simply been overlooked, or has the vote of the council silently been vetoed? Either way, it needs to be on the public record, and that's the reason I'm bringing it forward tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. We have no further general public comment items. Seeing none, we will move on. Anybody have any comments on that? I know it's a little bit unusual, but I think Jerry Wright.
I suspect it got forgotten. I would recommend that it be referred to our next Legal and Finance Committee for discussion.
Okay, do we have a motion to refer it to Legal and Finance?
Second.
And a second by Peterson. Since we have a motion on the floor for discussion, I would just simply like to say that my understanding is that our city attorney had visited with Alderman Davis shortly after this, and it was my understanding that the issue had been resolved. I'd be happy to discuss this in a public forum at the Legal and Finance meeting. If we want to drag out this whole thing in front of God and everybody and talk about it, we certainly can. But I think it's important to know that prior to tonight's meeting, there wasn't any discussion, or this didn't come forward to the city attorney for any consideration. But I'd be happy to talk about this at the Legal and Finance next week. But the method that this is being brought up tonight is quite unfortunate. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to amend the motion to send this to executive session first, and then to have a discussion there, and then bring it, if it needs to be brought up, then bring it out to Legal and Finance, but take it to the executive session first, because it is a personnel matter, rather than, and I'll wait if I get a second.
Oh, sir, we're not talking about anybody else. May I have the floor?
We don't have an item on the agenda, but we have in the past allowed for motions to put an item either on the evening's agenda or at a following meeting. So there's several ways we can do this. Allison, do you have any recommendation?
I was just going to mention, in regard to discussing it in executive session, it would certainly be appropriate to discuss a specific personnel matter if there was anything to discuss with the specific grievance item that came forward. I'm not sure that it would be appropriate to discuss a policy in general in executive session. That should probably come forward at a public meeting.
Jerry.
To clarify, my motion is for discussion of and development of the policy, not the issue. That's why it should go to Legal and Finance. There's no need for executive session.
Richie.
Mayor, if that's the intent of the motion, then I'll withdraw my motion, because, anyway, I'll just withdraw my motion.
Okay. I don't think your motion was seconded. We do have a motion to come to Legal and Finance for further discussion. And I think, quite frankly, the whole issue needs to come out in the public record if this is going to be brought up in a method to cast aspersions. So I think we should go ahead and do that. And Dave, thanks again. I'll send you an 8-cent postcard later thanking you for the question. Any further discussions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. We're now on non-public hearing items 3 through 59B, and this also includes item 3B, which was added to the agenda earlier. We will first go to a motion to open public comment on 3 through 33. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Scott. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we do not have any speaker request forms on items 3 through 33. Do we have a motion to close public comment? We have a motion by Clayton and a second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment is now closed on items 3 through 33. Do we have any items that council members would like to remove? We'll go first to Charity Doyle.
I'd like to pull item number 23, please.
Item 23, Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item 24, please.
Okay. Item 24, Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull items 16, 22, and 28.
Item 16, 22, and 28. Any further items? So far, we have items 16, 22, 23, 24, and 28. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the balance of consent?
So moved.
Motion by Clayton, second by Doyle, to approve items 3 through 33 with the exception of 16, 22, 23, 24, and 28. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 16, Amanda? Sorry, that was a Public Works item. Jerry, right?
Item 16 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign an agreement between the City of Rapid City and Ferber Engineering Company for design and bidding professional services for Seeger Drive Reconstruction Phase 1, project number 11-1947, CIP number 5277, 1 and 2, in the amount of $264,950. I yield the floor.
Do we have a motion? We'll first go to Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion to approve this, but I'd like to retain the floor.
We have a motion to approve and a second by Doyle. Amanda, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, because I'm still learning, being new on the council. I wanted to clarify where the funding is coming from this. It looks like, and I just wanted to double check on here, that part of this is going to be repaid back by the .16 fund. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Terry.
Go to Mr. Terry.
Terry's good.
Terry, I was just wanted for clarification. It looks like this is coming from 4 different funds.
That's correct. This particular project, originally Ferber Engineering had been hired to do the sewer design work on Seeger Drive with the $22 million bond out of the .16 fund that was approved this summer. We expanded the scope of that project to include water and street construction. So that's why we're doing the change to the original contract, and that's why there's multiple funding sources, because you're going to have water, sewer, and CIP funding in there.
And these funds that are going to be reimbursed back by the .16 fund, this is for the year 2012, or is this carrying over to 2013? Is this in the 2012 budget for the .16 and for all this?
2012.
2012? Okay. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion on item 16? The motion is for approval. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 22, Jerry.
22. To acknowledge the 2011 annual energy report for the City of Buildings and Facilities with Gunnar DeZentars. And I yield the floor.
We'll recognize Gunnar.
Gunnar Zentars, the City School Common Energy Plant Manager. You have in front of you the 2011 Annual Energy Report for City Buildings and Facilities. Now, just briefly go through that and entertain any questions from the full council. I did present this to the Public Works Committee at last week. You have in your packet the introduction, and I'm assuming you've read through that, and that just briefly explains the report and some of the basic numbers. And what I'd like to do is start with this first graph, the annual utility cost history. This is basically just a dollar amount that the city's spent in the last 10 years on energy, the natural gas and electricity. As you can see, the amount has risen from about $2,250,000 in 2000 to approximately twice that in our $2,225,000. $2,250,000, so to $4.5 million in 2011. Our natural gas expenditures have been relatively stable, so the most of that rise is due to electricity, either through increased use or in additional increases in electrical rates, which actually both are responsible. Now, this next graph shows the amount that's spent by department. The blue would be the natural gas amount. So as you can see, the natural gas varies anywhere from 20% to less than 5% per department. So again, that's showing most of our expenditure is for electricity. The reason that I've got this graph and include this every year is that as you make decisions as elected officials, that you see where we can get the biggest bang for the buck as these types of decisions come before you. Obviously, if we're being 50% inefficient in parking lots, it's not smart to spend a lot of effort on that. If you're being 5% inefficient in the airport, because the expenditure is so much greater. The next graph, what I did differently this year, because I've probably been guilty of throwing a lot of data at the council and department heads in the last years, and it's easy to explain away the increases because, the rates went up, or we've increased our services, or the weather, whatever. There's any number of reasons that that can explain away the increases. So what I tried to do was relate the increased cost and usage to the actual inflation, the consumer price index, times the population increase in the city of Rapid City. So if we were in a perfect world, what we would try to do, say if you went back to 2000, is that the rate we were spending dollars per capita in our community would be the same as what we were spending dollars per capita in 2011, according to this rate, which figures in inflation. But as you can see, the energy costs have increased percentage-wise almost twice what inflation and population have been doing. So that opens a question as to why is that happening. I mean, certainly part of that could be rate increases, but nowadays with more efficient equipment and conservation programs, we still should, in my opinion, should be able to be closer to that blue line with our actual energy costs. Now this graph is similar. It shows the population times inflation rate of increase for Rapid City over the last 10 years. And the orange part of the graph there is the increase in actual use. So unlike the previous graph, this doesn't have a cost factor. As you can see, that's continued to outpace inflation and population up until 2010. My theory about 2010, without doing a full analysis on every single department and building, is that the fall was a little warmer that year, so that decreased it some. And then in the middle of 2009, we had a 20% increase in electricity costs as far as rates, or the rates jumped 20%. So it became, and this again, my theory is that we kind of had a involuntary, voluntary involuntary by the nature of people wanting to do it, energy conservation program. So what I think is interesting is that we reduced our energy, and I think this is my theory, we reduced that energy, that drop in 2010, most of that was due to departments reducing their energy usage because of the increased rates. So it is possible, just by following policy and making decisions to turn things off and run more efficiently, to reduce our energy rates or our energy costs. Let's see, I thought I had one more slide in here, but maybe that wasn't on this one. Nope, that one didn't get on there. I did add a slide. Back here. Well, I'm not pressing the right button, but I did add this slide. I did add a graph for percentage difference in weather, and when I plotted that out, that actually was almost followed that bottom line closely, between plus or minus 5 to 15%, but basically followed that 0% line, or averaged that 0%. So these increases in energy use and costs can't really be related to weather. The weather variation over the last 10 years has been minimal. And that's the summary of my report. So I'd entertain any questions.
We'll first go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to make a motion to acknowledge this report and then retain the floor.
Okay. Motion by Scott, second by Roberts.
Thank you for your information. I wasn't present at the Public Works Committee meeting, but I did stream it and watch it, and so I saw your presentation. You also added some more information for me tonight, and I really appreciate that. You piqued my interest, which is why I requested the data from you, and I was playing with some figures this past weekend, and I'd like to ship that back to you. From what I gathered through there, it looks like the departments, like you said, all the department heads, according to their report from December 20th of 2011, actually did implement a lot of those energy conservations, and it looks like all the departments are doing a very good job to date in some of that energy conservation. But something else came to light, and that's why I'd like to send the information back to you, and I'd like to bring it up at a future Legal and Finance Committee. Seems to me that with the city, if we actually looked at the city in totality for its usage, we might be able to get reduced rates, because it looks like some of the other lower usages entities within the city are actually paying higher rates when you take it down to a per unit cost, whether it's an MMBTU or a kilowatt. So I'm going to suggest that we kind of take a look at trying to get some taxpayer savings here by getting a volume rate from both our, I'm assuming there may be 2 utility companies here involved, or there may be 3, MDU plus 2 electrical companies, or if it's just all Black Hills and Power, we might be able to get a volume rate, and I think that would be an excellent way to explore in saving the taxpayers money. So, great job, and the data is really good, so I really appreciate you gathering all that data for me. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to send you the spreadsheet that I was playing with back to you.
Oh, that'd be fine. You have my email, so.
So I'll be sending that to you today. All right? Thank you. I yield the floor.
Thank you. We'll go to Bonnie Peterson. Bonnie?
Thanks. I would like to, so frequently what happens when we get this information that it kind of gets brushed aside. So we do need to make sure we get this on the agenda and not let months go by before we take action to look and see if there is such a thing as volume savings, or that's an excellent idea. But one of the problems is that usually we get this annual report, and that's why I asked for it to be brought to the full council, is because we get this report and then frequently nothing is done. And I know the department heads have made improvements. I don't know if there's yet more to be made, but we do need to make sure that we get this on the next, it's going to be Legal and Finance agenda, so that we can start taking action. Thank you.
Jerry Wright.
I would like to give the commercial, thanks Gunnar, is that we take these reports and we do something with them, and I encourage our departments in our city as we develop our budgets for 2014 that we take every action we can within our budgetary means to implement energy conservation. And for the benefit of the council, Gunnar, I do believe many of our departments are on, I would call it, group rates, but also we have peak demand and interruptible rates and so forth, so that we can take advantage of rates that are, I would say, advantageous and beneficial to the taxpayers, correct? Could you explain those to the group?
Well, the rates are set by the PUC. So basically, when you go to MDU or Black Hills Power, they take each meter and it falls under a certain rate. Now, in terms of volume discount, that I don't want to speak for MDU and Black Hills Power, but part of the thing that we're up against in this area is that we have lots of energy. They're not looking to sell it any cheaper. But I'm not speaking for them. I mean, we could try to negotiate, but they basically, every account is under a set rate, and that's what they're allowed to charge, you know, as determined by the PUC. Now, we have negotiated some things in the past with, most notably with Black Hills Power, in terms of some savings, like we've got a combined demand rate for our large accounts, which has saved us several $1,000s a year. And then there's some old rates that they've allowed to exist, but that actually have expired. One is at the energy plant, we actually buy power on an interruptible rate, which is no longer exists for half price. But that rate will go away or will expire with our expansion once our energy plant, not expansion, but remodel is finished.
We'll go to Ron Sasso.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things, too, that I know. One thing, the library, we've had some discussions on the library board about bringing forward some of the cost-saving measures that the library has looked at, because this is one of the challenges for a lot of departments as far as, one, spending money to save money and how long that can take sometimes. So a lot of times there's apprehension on doing that. Another thing that I think is worth throwing out there, and I think we as a city need to continue looking at the discussion on this, is a building supervisor that basically oversees all our buildings, because energy efficiency also would probably, in addition to what you're doing, Gunnar, would also work hand in hand in saying, okay, yes, we really should be implementing this here, and having somebody that you can coordinate with might be something worth exploring. But that's something I know we've talked about a little bit, and I think is worthwhile. So, and please excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm a little congested. Thank you.
We have no further discussion. Everyone understands the motion?
Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up question for Gunnar is, Ron has suggested as a couple of ideas in that area of a building maintenance manager / energy manager. Have we been able to do a preliminary discussion about the need for a position, something like that? They'll probably have to start off doing a couple of jobs as a maintenance manager and then also work in as a energy auditor. I'm not sure exactly what I want to call that title for it right now, but have we had that discussion yet?
There's really been no formal discussion that I'm aware of. I mean, I think the dream for a buildings and grounds department started way back in Leonard Swanson's day. The city is kind of an odd position because we have such a variety of departments. So except for the larger cities where they will staff a whole entire department and have the facilities to take care of, typically smaller cities are doing what we're doing now, is every department kind of runs itself. Can we fund a central department? Well, we're already funding it. We're just doing it in each department.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just looking at the idea of having this all centralized and one person to be responsible for a couple of different functions. So I was wondering if that discussion has started, or would it be cost savings? So I'd be interested in seeing if we can get to the point if this would justify a savings for the taxpayers.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Charlene. We have a motion on the floor to acknowledge. Charity, go ahead.
I think the only motion on the floor is to acknowledge Amanda commented that we would be bringing this to Legal and Finance to explore. I don't believe there was an actual motion or a second made by Bonnie. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to acknowledge? Jeff Barbier, would you make sure that this is on Legal and Finance next week and invite Eric and the committee also? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 23. Amanda.
Resolution number 2012-111, setting ambulance rates. And I make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Scott, second by Nordstrom to approve. Any discussion? Charity.
It's a race over here. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to comment that because we had a lot of discussion over the recent 2013 budget and the CPI, I am on the MSAC committee and wanted to basically let people understand that just because the city has decided not to take the CPI doesn't mean that our providers aren't taking it. So people who are supplying our services or products, things like that, most likely are taking that as well. And this adjustment to the ambulance rates, and the ambulance, keep in mind, is an enterprise fund, so the CPI, the increase, is going to be paid by ratepayers, is something that is a smart business practice, and they're having to implement that in order to keep that enterprise solvent. And so my question is actually for you, Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind indulging me. Sure. I know we appreciated the heads up when you said I'm going to veto it. Do you intend to veto this one?
No.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Keeping me on my toes tonight. Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll try to figure out how to use the system. I'm just, I guess, glad we pulled this item up. For a quick question for the chief, if I could, please. Just for public information, do we negotiate contracts with with Dakota Care, Blue Cross, the major insurance companies for our rates, or do we just, how does that work? If you could.
I did see a potential question tonight coming, so I brought our EMS chief this evening, and he could speak specific to some of those items.
That'd be perfect. I'd appreciate that.
Chief Culberson.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you coming out tonight and missing the Cowboys. How are they doing? Anybody know?
0-0.
Okay.
First.
Once again, if you
Not that
don't
I'm
restate the
paying attention.
question. The question was brought forth to me when one of the constituents just want to know if we negotiate our contracts with the various insurance companies for pricing.
We have in the past. 2003 we did with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Dakota Care. One of the reasons we don't, business decision, not to. They request when we contract with them that we take a large decrease in our reimbursement. And so that's the business decision, that we can't accept that and still continue to do business.
Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that was in the record, and it's for the understanding of the people that asking the questions, and appreciate you coming down tonight, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I direct a question to the chief as well?
You may.
Chief, my question is just, it looks like this 3% increase or the rates changes are being proposed to be effective October 1st, right, like today? Or when is the effective rate change date?
I guess I can't answer that one either. As soon as possible. Normally we do it at this time of year. We start the process, and usually it's done by the end of August to be implemented by the 1st of September. So it got put on the back burner for a while with some changes in our MSOC committee and some other things that came about. So my guess is implementation by November 1st.
November 1st? All right, thank you for the clarification. And then a follow-up question. Since we're proposing a 3% increase on these rates, as Charity Doyle mentioned, I'm assuming it's due to the cost of running the ambulances that
Very
you've
much
been able to
correct.
track. So what does your budget look like for this year? Where are you accommodating those costs that have already occurred? Where is that coming out of your budget?
Everywhere and anywhere I can find it. That's kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis. That's a big part of my job, is going through our budget, making sure our expenditures don't outpace our income at this point. And we've had a problem with that in the past prior to my taking over. And so we do that weekly, we discuss it, but I look at it every day. Right now, we've done several changes within our billing department to stay ahead of the pace. Basically, we break even at this point. Looking at our expenditures for next year, that's why we're doing the increase now. We do it about now, so then we'll start seeing some of that about mid-year next year. Well, February, March timeframe is when we'll start seeing some of the money that will generate from this rate increase. We'll see in February, March of next year. So it impacts the 2013 budget more than it would the 2012.
Will you be experiencing a deficit in your budget?
No.
Because this is an enterprise fund, correct?
Correct.
You will not be experiencing a deficit this year?
Not this year.
All right.
Well, projected, no. Right now, we're on a dead heat, so we're staying about even. Actually, a little ahead. We did some healing this past year. We've stopped some of our big purchases that we looked at doing. We aren't buying any new IV pumps. We received a grant to buy some cardiac monitors for replacement of those. So we've looked at other avenues to try to keep ahead on some of our capital equipment. That's where the big savings has come this year.
So basically, your savings you've been able to achieve this year to accommodate these costs,
Correct.
these consumer price index costs, by shortcutting yourself on future purchase of equipment.
Well, yes, kind of.
All right. Thank you.
Sort of.
Thank you. You answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go to Pauline Sumption, our finance officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to clarify the effective date of this resolution, the fees cannot be effective until 20 days after publication, which, according to what normally happens in our office, will be on October 13th will be publication, and so it'll be about November 2nd or 3rd that these rates could go into effect.
Sounds good to me. That's why we have our billing staff. My billing manager, she takes care of that for me. So.
Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that the council received the letter that I got late today about concerns about the rate changes. Chief, have you had an opportunity to review this letter?
I believe if it's the same one from, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, hesitate mentioning names here, but
right. No, and that's fine. If I believe it had to deal with, a lot of it had with the first question about Blue Cross Blue Shield and contracting with them.
No, this one is a separate one, and doesn't mention Blue Cross, but anyway, it had to do with 2 family members, and one was a bee sting, and another one was.
Oh, yeah, it's the same one.
It's the same one. Okay. Just so you're aware of that concern from this family, and.
Yes, and I'm dealing with that as we speak. I answered a couple of the council members and the mayor, and then I'll be contacting her tomorrow morning. So
very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. Ron Sasso.
Just a question I'm trying to remember. I think over the past year there was some larger amount that we had written off, I think, for uncollectible.
Yep.
Okay.
And the uncollectible piece is varied. A lot of that is our governmental mandatory write-offs that we have to take, and also uncollectible bills that we've attempted to get. A lot of this goes back to 2003 when our first inception. So we've worked these as long as we can. Now we have to start writing them and get them off our books.
And that, I'm assuming that has probably played in a little bit, knowing that that's been building for some time.
As you can, all this is kind of all coming together.
And just on a moment to a little praise for the staff that does the collections there, because the recovery rate is exceptional. I don't know if Chief Multivern wants to talk a little bit about that. Yes.
Chief Mike.
Thank you. A few comments. You're right. Our our ambulance collection rates are far exceed the national standards for ambulance services provided by fire departments. So we are very proud of our billing staff. As Chief Culbertson has mentioned, he's made a couple of internal tweaks to the way we collect and the way we process our paperwork, and the time that we, from the time of the ambulance call to the time we generate the bill and get that off to the patient and also submit to the insurance companies. We've done some procedural changes, which has, I think, increased our revenue. Jason's starting to see some of that. I will say that, this thing does ebb and flow, just like any business model. We see dips and dives, and then we see things bounce back. And that's why Jason alluded to, we have our eyes on this thing pretty much daily and weekly at a minimum. And, we do make adjustments from time to time, but overall, we're very, very confident in where we are today. In this coming March, in about 6 months, we'll celebrate our 10-year anniversary for having ambulance operations based out of the fire department. And like I said, we've had 10 very successful years, and because of people like Jason and our billing staff taking a look at things daily and making these adjustments. So it's really certainly no case of doom and gloom us asking for this rate increase. It's a process we go through every year, and we look at the medical CPI for our region, and this is a recommendation that came before or through MSOC committee onto the council. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Any further discussion on the motion? The motion is to approve item number 23. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 24. Amanda.
Resolution number 2012-107A, fixing time and place for hearing on assessment roll for cleanup of miscellaneous property. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Amanda, second by Bonnie Peterson. Any discussion? We'll go to Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to actually thank Peter Wernicke for pointing this out to me. In the resolution, it refers to Section 943.43 to 943.53 of the South Dakota Codified Laws, and actually July 1, the special assessment laws were rewritten in totality, and so when this comes forward again for the actual public hearing, we will have that corrected to reflect the current statutes. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you, Pauline. Any further discussion on the motion? Motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 28. Amanda?
Acknowledge the update on the Veterans Consideration Policy, and I make a motion to acknowledge, but I'd like to retain the floor.
Okay, we have a motion by Scott and a second by Nordstrom. Go ahead.
And Mayor, I guess I'll address this to you since I don't know who else. But in the documentation attached to this one, it basically says that the veteran's preference in hiring will be the same as the disability consideration. Was this a separate resolution? I'm a little confused in the wording of this one.
Jeff, would you like to help us out with this one? We'll go to Jeff Barbier.
The veteran's consideration or the existence of a veteran's preference is required by South Dakota state law. And so to give us a consistent mechanism to allow for both the disability consideration and the veteran consideration, since October of last year, when the disability consideration was passed by resolution, we administer them both the same way, so that we're consistent.
And so, just to follow up, then as deemed by the state, the veteran's preference policy, what does that actually entail?
Well, and I don't know if Allison has been briefed on this without Joel being here. Joel usually speaks to this, but basically it says that you have to allow that a veteran receives preference, that they will go into the highest group being considered for the position, and if you have two people that are equal candidates for the position, you would hire the veteran. And in fact, you would hire the disabled veteran before a veteran that is not disabled. So it gets a little bit complicated, but to put them in the highest group considered for the job that meet the qualifications, we automatically grant them an interview, and it's been the opinion of the city attorney's office that we're covered as far as following the state statute by doing that.
Okay, so just for clarification then on the application itself, which I have looked at, it's got an area where a veteran can mark that they're a veteran and provide their DD-214.
Correct.
For proof. And then there's another section for the disability. But both disabled people that meet the qualifications and our veterans who meet the qualifications, both will have an interview if they meet the minimum.
They have to meet the minimum qualifications for the job, yes. If there are education and experience requirements for the job, they must meet them in order to receive an interview.
All right. So it'll be treated the same then. And we didn't need a separate resolution because that's deemed by state at that point.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for the clarification. I do want to bring up, because I believe we had to take a look at it if it's possible. I don't know if everybody's aware of this. If you've been out to get your driver's license updated recently, you know it takes quite a lot to get your driver's license. But one of the nice things the state of South Dakota does do now is that any veteran who takes their DD-214 out there actually has veteran stamped on their South Dakota driver's license. So I also think I'll be bringing up to Legal and Finance to be able to use once they've already been, oh, you already have a comment on that? Perfect.
I do, if it's okay, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
The issue that we might have with that is the procedure, because all of our applications for employment are done online. So they fill out the veteran would fill out the application online, and then they would fax us that DD-214 so that we know that they qualify for the veteran consideration. We don't actually see an applicant's ID until we've made them a contingent offer of employment, and they are in the Human Resources office. When we look at their ID, to check their Social Security card and fill out an I-9 that they're qualified to work, to accept that position. So it would actually be extra work for them, I believe, to have to come down to the HR office and show us their ID that says they're a veteran. Now, we can open it up to that, certainly, if they would like to do that rather than fax us the DD-214.
Thank you. I'm just if it's more work, then I'm against it, but I'm actually just trying to get rid of the redundancy that we seem to be going back to killing a lot of trees in order to produce paperwork all over the place. So, but thank you for already looking into that for me, Jeff. Thanks. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Amanda. We'll go to Jerry Wright. Jerry?
If you'll accept a facsimile DD 214, would you take a facsimile driver's license with the marking? Just an option to think about.
Yeah, something we'd have to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to take a moment before we proceed to the vote to thank Jeff Barbier and Human Resources Department for addressing this issue. We did discover when we were implementing the disability consideration policy last year that the veterans consideration policy had not been uniformly administered over the years, and that has since been corrected. We now have a uniform process in place, and I want to thank you, Jeff, for your leadership in addressing that issue and your department. Any further discussion? Motion is to acknowledge. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on non-consent items 34 through 59B. Do we have a motion to open public comment? Motion by Doyle, second by Lewis. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We do have several speaker request forms. We'll first go to Mark Thiessen on item 43. Item 43. Mr. Thiessen?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just had some thoughts. Go something like this. Many of the people who bought property on Reddale Drive and Hillsview Drive bought it as is, and have made, worked with their situation, whether they had a sidewalk, didn't have a sidewalk, made improvements, installed sprinkler systems, retaining walls at their own expense. And I guess my feeling is that it's just, it's for a number of people, it's not just a matter of, it wouldn't be just a matter of installing a sidewalk at their expense, but actually undoing the things that they've done in order to accommodate the requirement for a sidewalk. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, man.
And I'll go to Wayne Shotwell, also on item 43.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I live at 1906 Reddale Drive, which is right on the corner of West St. Patrick and Reddale. I'm not arguing the fact about the sidewalk, but I'm arguing about that this is a safety issue, and I don't think sidewalks are going to improve the safety of that. We have a narrow street, a high traffic flow, high speeds, and people that will run that stop sign right at the corner there of West St. Patrick and Reddale Drive. I sat out there last weekend talking to a neighbor for about 15, 20 minutes, and we probably saw 8 to 12 people run that stop sign. Like I said, this is more of a safety problem. It's also a problem that really hasn't been, the neighborhood hasn't caused this problem. This problem probably started 40 years or better ago when they built Stevens High School. That has caused an influx of traffic down our street. I don't think at the time an ingress or an egress was addressed, but over the years this has also become a follow through for anybody that wants to cut across from West Chicago or Main Street. So that's adding more traffic. If we had the normal traffic of a normal residential street, we probably wouldn't be having discussion. Now, you understand that this is the problem because the speed limit is 20, which is not normal for even a residential area. So you're acknowledging that this is a problem area. Now what you're trying to do is tell me, who has the largest amount of property to do, if you look at your schedule, the average person is $3,300, mine is well over $6,000, which also causes a financial problem for some people, especially like myself. In about 15 months, I'm looking to get my finances in order and semi-retire, which this will put a little damper on it. I'm not going to say a total damper on it. But guess what I'm saying on the safety end of it, since it was not caused by the problem by the neighborhood, it's basically been caused by the city. It's my feeling if you want sidewalks, that the city should pay for these sidewalks, not the neighborhood. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Wayne. We'll now go to Ethan Hudson, also on item 43. Ethan?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been working with this issue for quite a while. Started back in January, February, talking with Ms. Peterson and Mr. Sasso, and originally came before the Public Works Committee on February 28th. The crux of the issue is not whether or not sidewalks are needed. The issue boils down to the safety of the persons that live in the neighborhood, as well as all the people that use that street as pedestrians. The Stevens High School cross-country team, all the people who live in the low-income apartments further up the street. A lot of the reasons why they're in there is because there's a lot of new moms who have strollers being pushed up and down the street. I myself have 2 young children. I taught my son, 4 years old, how to ride his bike without training wheels on the street, and there's no safe haven for a pedestrian. As Wayne mentioned, it's a narrow street. The speed limit is posted as 20 miles an hour. There has been some comments from council and Mr. Terry that based on a speed cart that we had for about 24 hours, Ron and I had talked about getting the speed cart there. The notion that 85% of the traffic that goes down that street obeys the traffic posted speed limit within 2 or 3 miles an hour is not true. When that speed cart was posted up, is everyone familiar with Red Dale Drive? For the most part, there's one bend about halfway down the street. That speed cart was posted right at the bend. Every person who came to the stop sign at West St. Pat and Red Dale saw the speed cart from 200 yards away. And as they were driving down the street, there was large red numbers flashing at them saying, "You're going too fast." Human nature, people saw that and they rode their brakes. I have never seen so many people ride their brakes down that street in my life. I think, at least my own opinion, I've never clocked traffic going down the street. I don't have a radar gun, but that 85% probably correlates to the 85% of people who are honest and honestly don't realize that their speed is progressing to 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour. The reaction time for someone who's going 30 miles an hour or 35 is significantly slower, and they can't stop as fast as somebody who's going 20. I personally have had, as well as my wife, several close calls where you're coming around that corner, especially at this time of year where it's still nice out. But it gets dark early. You go down to Canyon Lake Park and time gets away, and you're coming home, and there's a car coming around that corner, and it's somewhat of a blind corner, and you can tell that they don't see you. I agree with Wayne that the installation of a sidewalk is not going to make it safer. Mr. Terry had brought up at the Public Works Committee meeting on Tuesday whether or not my original intent was to have just sidewalks installed, or if it's an enforcement issue. It's both. My wife stays at home and takes care of our 2 kids as part of her job, and she sees a lot more of the traffic than I do, especially during the day. But the calls that are made are significant. At least in the last year, we've seen a lot more enforcement. But I don't think that it's reasonable to expect that the police department posts a patrol 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and without that, or without some other traffic control measure, speed bumps, which I've been notified.
Ethan, if you could wrap up your comments, please.
I just wanted to bring up a couple things as far as this schedule in terms of costs. I don't know if the city uses empirical data for that or not. I do commercial construction for a living, and I think these numbers are sort of high. I assume that if the city assesses this work, that the actual cost is what will be charged to the homeowners. Is that correct?
Ethan, when we get to that item, there'll be an opportunity for council members to ask you questions and to seek clarification at that time.
Are we not on that item?
Right now, we're at the public comment for items 34 through 59B. So
okay. I'm
we'll
sorry, I'm not familiar
That's okay.
with
It's okay.
your policies. Thanks.
Okay. We We do not have any further comments on items 34 through 59B. Did I miss anyone? Seeing none, do we have a motion to close public comment? We have a motion by Clayton, second by Doyle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item number 34, Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance 5859, an ordinance to amend the requirements for conditional use permits for oversized garages by amending section 17.08.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code in the Park Forest District. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I may, I'd like to ask Brett Limbaugh questions pertaining to 34 through 36.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Limbaugh, I'd like you to state for the record, explain the differences, what we're doing differently with this versus what we've done in the past, and how it's making things easier, if you wouldn't mind clarifying.
Okay. Just to clarify, the three ordinances, we have to look at the Park Forest Zone District, the Low Density Residential District, and the Mobile Home District. Right now, if you want to get a garage permit, you're allowed to go up to 1,500 square feet, or 30% of the floor area of the principal structure, whichever is greater. If you want to go larger than that, you have to get a conditional use permit. And the conditional use permit goes to Planning Commission for approval. If Planning Commission were to deny that, then they could appeal to the council. As part of that conditional use permit approval, there is also a requirement that the applicant file a separate notice with the Register of Deeds stating that they won't use the oversized garage for business purposes. Within the zoning ordinance, it says that you can't use a garage for business purposes anyways. So we feel that having someone file that initial, notice with the Register of Deeds is not necessary. So within each of these three ordinances, it's just removing that conditional use permit requirement for the additional notice to be filed with the Register of Deeds. It does not eliminate the conditional use permit requirement for an oversized garage.
Thank you. And then the reason we're using a conditional use permit process is simply so that the neighborhood is notified, that
That's
they
correct.
can have their input registered as well.
That's right.
Anything else on that, or?
That's what the ordinance are. They're pretty straightforward.
All right. Thanks for cleaning that up for us. Appreciate it.
Amanda.
Thank you. May I also ask Brett
You may.
a question? Brett, just for my clarification, what's the cost of a regular permit?
It's based on the cost of the garage. So it generally equates to about 1% of the building costs.
Okay. And is the same cost for the conditional use permit?
A conditional use permit is an additional application fee. I believe it's $250.
So, just for clarification, are you saying they have to apply for the regular building permit and then pay an additional $250 on top of it?
If they're going to go for an oversized garage, so if if you have something that's 1,500 or less, you just pull a building permit. If you want to do something greater than that, you first have to get the conditional use permit approval. And then if that gets approved, then you can apply for the building permit.
Okay, so they would first apply for the conditional use permit for $250, and then if it's approved, they would go back and pull the building permit, which is 1% of the total square footage of the garage at that point.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion on item 34? The motion is for approval. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 35, Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance number 5858, an ordinance to amend the requirements for conditional use permits for oversized garages by amending section 17.10.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code in the Low Density Residential District Number 1. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 36.
Second reading, ordinance number 5860, an ordinance to amend the requirements for conditional use permits for oversized garages by amending section 17.38.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code in the Mobile Home Residential District. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Lewis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 37.
The first reading, ordinance number 5870, an ordinance to revise the terms of the water rate relief program by amending section 1308.430C of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Wright, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 38.
The first reading of ordinance number 5871, an ordinance to revise the terms of the sewer rate relief program by amending section 13.6.36E of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Wright, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. 39.
It's the first reading of ordinance 5867, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Bailey Associates Incorporated for rezoning from medium-density residential district to general ag district for property generally described as being located east of the current terminus of Commerce Road. Make a motion for approval.
Motion by Wright, second by Lewis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. 40. Jerry?
40 is a request by Highway 16 Properties, LLC, for a petition for annexation for property generally described as being located at 7001 South Highway 16, Resolution 2012-105, and recommend approval contingent upon the payment due from Whispering Pines Fire Protection District.
Second.
Motion by Wright, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. 41.
Is a request by Arleth and Associates for CPP Rushmore LLC for a preliminary subdivision plan for property generally described as being located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Eglin Street and East North Street. I make a motion for approve with stipulation.
Second.
Motion by Wright, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 42.
Item 42 is a request from Steve Becker regarding the 2012 alfalfa hay harvest contract, and I make a motion to deny.
Second.
We have a motion by Wright and a second by Roberts to deny. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 43. Jerry?
Is a discussion and direction to require sidewalks on portions of Reddale Drive and Hillsview Drive, and I yield the floor for discussion.
Floor has been yielded. We'll go to Chad Lewis. Okay. Go to Charity Doyle.
Such chivalry. Thank you. I'd like to try to get Ethan's question answered, if I may. Would that be Mr. Terry's realm? I think it's stuck.
Absolutely. I think I can answer that question.
Thank you.
If the sidewalks are not installed by the property owners, if they were ordered in, the city would hire a contractor. We would bid it out, hire the contractor, install it, and then the actual costs of the construction based on the actual bid prices are what are assessed. Typically, there's some additional administrative fees attached to it, but it's the actual cost of the bid.
So the property owner could very well shop around, find someone has the most competitive price and install that way.
As a rule of thumb, based on my history in the past doing sidewalk projects like this, usually larger projects, homeowners generally better off doing it themselves, hiring their own contractor. As a rule of thumb, if they were small, 5 foot by 5 foot sections of sidewalk, a lot of times it's sometimes more beneficial if the city were to do it because we can lump a lot of them together. Having said that, a long stretch like this where there's a lot of them going in, sometimes the city may get a better price on it.
Okay. And then the last question I have, Terry, if you don't mind, is normally if the city doesn't force sidewalks in, can you describe the situations wherein if the homeowner wanted to do X, Y, and Z to their property, they would then also have to put the sidewalks in?
There are some requirements if they do a certain amount of work based on the building permit that they're pulling. Sometimes they're required to install a sidewalk as part of the building permit. Occasionally, you'll see some waiver requests come forward to the city council where they're requesting a waiver for that. Very common if it's a rural section, 24 foot wide, and there's no additional sidewalks in the area. A lot of times they will apply for a waiver, and the staff will usually concur or recommend that waiver approval.
And do you know what percentage of Reddale and Hillsview actually have sidewalks right now? Just on the side that you're looking at. It was hard to pick up from the aerials.
Yeah, I would guess that, to be honest with you, a majority of the property owners have not installed the sidewalk on the sides we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see Dave Mortimer's in the audience. Sir, would you mind answering a couple questions for me? Could you identify yourself for the record and your address, sir, please?
I'm Dave Mortimer. I live at 1901 Reddale Drive.
Thank you. Okay, quick question for you. We talked earlier today and we discussed this. And what do you do for a living, sir?
I am the sales manager at Coldwell Banker Lewis Kirkby Hall Real Estate.
Okay. And when we were talking about this, as far as when we purchased this property, you knew of no regulations or requirements coming forth that you're going to have to put in sidewalks, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do any of your neighbors have any of those issues? Have they been informed? When they bought the property, were they told they'd have to put in sidewalks at that point?
No.
Okay. Do you see this very much in your business?
I think what's difficult about what you have is that in this particular situation, there are an awful lot of neighborhoods in Rapid City, just generally speaking, that actually do not have sidewalks in them. So when you take a would-be buyer into that neighborhood, you assume that neighborhood's going to somewhat stay the way that it is. I mean, this is a neighborhood that was constructed in the 1950s. And so, when you come in, and it'll depend on how long you've been in that neighborhood. 30, 35 years ago, there was probably no sidewalks. And over time, because of the requirements over with the building permits and stuff like that, there has been some sidewalks added in. But generally speaking, if people want new amenities, they move to newer neighborhoods that have that newer amenities with them.
Would it be fair to say, sir, that maybe yourself or maybe other neighbors may not have purchased property here if they know they're going to have this additional expense?
Well, I would say absolutely. I think one of the real concerns has to be if, for example, a family came in and they were a new home buyer. Most of the cases in Rapid City, almost 50% of all the transfer of properties are with first-time home buyers. Those first-time home buyers, if they suffer from one thing, it's a lack of out-of-pocket money. So coming in, they would wind up taking and putting all of whatever equity they may have into that property in order to buy it, and they certainly wouldn't be able to take and afford to put sidewalks in after the fact.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. If I may continue, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Once again, I guess Mr. Mortimer did a great job of describing my basic feelings on this. I do believe that if the city does think it's that much of a safety issue, perhaps we should foot the bill for the sidewalks, because I don't think it's fair to the homeowners in an existing neighborhood that's been sitting there for over 50 years at this point to require them to come in and out of their pocket spend, $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. And in this day and age, in this economy, I don't think that's really something that's going to happen, or it's kind of a huge burden for people, and I just really wouldn't want them doing it to me. Although I do it, ahead of time nowadays, and new developments. But if you just buy a property and suddenly, 10 years later, someone tells you got to put in $5,000 worth of work, I don't know. It just seems kind of unfair to me. After we decide there's suddenly a safety issue, there's been one there for a long time, I think, and as the gentleman pointed out earlier, I think the city, not the city, but just the growth of the city might have contributed to this by having a high school there after this neighborhood was built. So anyway, that's my feelings.
We'll go to Allison Marsland, Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to point out that the section of city ordinance that requires this, I believe it's chapter 12.08, is actually pursuant to state law. SDCL chapter 946 is pointed to in the ordinance, and it's been on the books in the state in one form or another since it looks like 1890. The last time the statutory scheme was modified, it appears to be 1987. But it does provide statutory authority for the municipality to require homeowners to put in sidewalks.
Okay.
I appreciate that, Allison. I don't doubt that we have the authority to do it. I just don't necessarily mean that we should do it. That's all.
Thank you, Chad. We'll go to Ron Sasso.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. This is an issue that I think is probably one of the most difficult issues that, for me, as an alderman for this ward in this area, has dealt with, because on the one hand, sidewalks are good. They're great as far as I think they do add to pedestrian safety. But this area particularly, the problem I think that we're still skipping over, and if I can have just a little bit of latitude here, Mayor, is the control of the traffic in that area, which is really what originally drove this and brought this to the forefront, and looking at how we can go about slowing down the traffic in that area. I did take a look at the bike and pedestrian master plan, and though it does acknowledge that, yes, there are just pieces of sidewalk in there, it's not listed as a priority on the bike and pedestrian master plan. What it does indicate is like to have a shared bicycle lane, shared car bicycle lane for that area. Again, I think I've run through that area on foot, and it's a little unnerving when there are some high school students that will drive very fast. Some concerns that were brought up at Public Works that weren't brought up this evening, also that there are a lot of damage sometimes to those sidewalks. So those are concerns as well. I don't have a clear answer on this, but I do think that we still need to look at how we slow the traffic down in that area. I think that is one thing we have to, and I know we don't like speed bumps and that because of plows, but I do think that is something we have to look at, because even when the cart was there, the majority of the vehicles, though, and I know Ethan pointed out that a lot of people saw the cart and slowed down, but even still, the big concern with that, even if 85% were within that speed, those 15%, there were some that were 20 miles an hour over, and that's a thin roadway to be 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, and very dangerous. So anyway, thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Ron. We'll go to Jerry Wright.
I've got a solution. Whether I can get you all to vote for it, we'll see in a second. I know I've heard the discussion that if we do something, we're setting a precedent. That's what we do. We're talking about a safety issue, and I've lived out there a long time, and I don't remember a pedestrian accident there occurring. Probably has, certainly could. It's been a long time since we've had one, but Rapid Creek was there a long time before we had a flood, too. So inevitably, with the mix of cars, speed, pedestrians, something will probably happen. In 1963, there was a study done by Wilbur Smith to improve our transportation plan. Trouble is, we didn't do it all. If I remember right, there was a connection from 44 over to Canyon Lake Drive, and I think it went through Yucca Drive. We just didn't do it. We're paying for it today. I think if we fail to do something along this route that's corrective, a council will again deal with it, and the can will be again kicked down the street. Let's take it, let's fix it, let's set a precedent. I believe the cost is $50,000 to do both Hillsview and Reddale. My suggestion is this. Because of the speed, because of the terrain, because of the extremely limited right-of-way, let's build at least one safe route through that area. Let's install sidewalks on the east side of Reddale to complete the ones that are there at city expense. Let's install I call it a calming bump. Is that the right term for it, Terry? Or some things like that to slow the traffic down. And appropriate action on West St. Patrick. I make a motion to that effect. I can't make a motion. I would ask one of my fellow council members to make a motion to that effect then.
Before we go to any additional speaker lights, if it's all right, I'd like to make a comment which might help add clarity to this discussion. I remember this same topic coming up 9 or 10 years ago. Retired U.S. Senator Jim Abner lived on this street and had raised the concern. There were other people who had similar concern, and there was, a lot. The discussion was very similar to what we're having now regarding the expense, and that the residents weren't aware that they would have to be required to do this. My suggestion tonight is to table the discussion regarding the immediate ordering in of sidewalks, allow traffic engineering, John Less, to work with our police department to do a traffic and enforcement review and bring forward a report to a public works meeting in, I'd say, 45 days, 6 weeks. And that might add some clarity to the discussion. My suggestion.
May I comment on that?
You may after I go to 2 more lights.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
I'll make the motion, substitute motion to have traffic engineering look at it and bring it back to Public Works in 6 weeks.
We have a motion by Bonnie Peterson and a second by John Roberts, so this would be the second Public Works meeting in November.
Can I continue?
Still have the floor.
Yes. I used to drive my 3 children up and down those roads, and I know there's a lot of high school kids, and during the school time, it's a major thoroughfare for that area. Something needs to be done, but I'm also afraid that putting sidewalks in by themselves aren't going to really fix your speeding problems or your traffic control problems there. So I would encourage that we can look at it again, and hopefully we will come to a solution so we don't have to keep kicking this down the street. Thank you.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Terry, I have a question for you real quick. As far as sharing costs with the citizens on sidewalks, what would you think of that idea?
Sorry, I was laughing about something else. Granted, it's somewhat of a unique situation here where we've got obviously pedestrian traffic probably going up to the high school there. I do have some concerns over the city just 100% footing the bill on sidewalk. Not necessarily just because it sets a precedent, but looking at the community as a whole. Property owners who have installed and paid for their own sidewalks, those of you who have sidewalks in front of your homes, you're responsible to maintain it. If you have sidewalks that heave up and become a tripping hazard, you're going to get a notice from code enforcement, and you're going to be expected to fix that at your cost. Taxpayers aren't going to pay that for you. You're expected to shovel the snow on your sidewalk. The city's not going to do that for you. So I have some concerns. If we're going to start installing sidewalks on the city dime, and that's something I need to figure out where in the budget and in whose budget we're going to find that money. Is that a streets general fund budget item? Is it a CIP budget? Is it, if it's bike path related, is it a parks budget? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider there. I guess I'd like a little opportunity to think about it. I like the idea of being able to come back at a future date with some recommendations. And I do, just as a side note, I need a little clarification on the motion because I want to make sure I know what you guys are expecting us to come back with. If it's a plan for where's the best place to install the sidewalk at the least cost and the city's going to pick it up, if that's the intent of the motion, and then the speeding issues, if you want us to develop a plan for some traffic calming in this particular neighborhood, which is what I'm hearing.
Thank you very much, Terry. One other thing that I'd like to see go into this motion, if is possible, is that we have some kind of a pedestrian traffic count done. I would like to know what exactly the foot traffic is on these two roads. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And we'll go to Bill Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, for those of us who were at the Public Works Committee, if I'm not mistaken, and this would be a reminder, that one of the people who spoke to us lives on Reddale and explained that they had done some considerable landscaping work because people had run into their driveway. I mean, if they're not staying within the lane, then basically they're out of control. So even putting a sidewalk in is not going to curtail a car from jumping the sidewalk. So we keep talking about pedestrian safety. I think it's imperative that we first look at calming the traffic so that we don't have pedestrians being run over on a sidewalk rather than pedestrians potentially being run over not on a sidewalk. Thank you.
Jerry Wright.
What you said, Terry, yes, is I would like a most economical route to complete, minimal costs with the calming and traffic engineering construction included. And I appreciate everyone's concerns, but number one is if we don't build the sidewalks, and yes, cars do run up on sidewalks, but if we don't build the sidewalks and people are working on streets, I'll guarantee you cars run down streets. So let's get the sidewalks so we can separate the traffic. And I think this is a unique situation that we can solve a problem, and if we need to do it elsewhere, let's do it on as we can afford to. But this is the beginning of doing things right. I think we need to do it. But I'm all for bringing it back. We'll look at it and see what it costs, see how we can do it. Thank you.
Ron Sasso.
Thank you, Mayor. I 100% support looking into this, finding out what we can do for traffic calming, enforcement. I know the police department has stepped up in that area and has been working on that, but I definitely think that this might be a good place to explore some of the traffic calming options that we've looked at. As far as the other suggestion, as far as the city picking up the tab, looking at our ordinances, it appears we'd be pretty far outside of our ordinances if we were to do that. So I think as much as we'd like to do that, I don't think we could. So thank you.
Everyone understands the motion?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Bids. Pauline.
That was the way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item for bid was the 11th Street Railroad Crossing. We received 3 bids, one of which did not conform to the bid specifications. Recommendation is to award to Stanley J. Johnson Concrete Contractor, Inc. in the amount of $18,385.
Motion by Peterson, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 45 is the Maple Avenue Railroad Crossing Project. Again, we received 3 bids, one of which did not conform. Recommendation is to award to Stanley J. Johnson Concrete Contractor, Inc. in the amount of $18,935.
We have a motion by Peterson and a second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 46.
Item 46 is the 2012 Out of the Dust Project. We received 3 bids on this. Recommendation is to award the base bid only in the amount of $62,175 to Simon Contractors of South Dakota, Inc.
Motion by Peterson, second by Roberts to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
47 is the 2011-12 Manhole Adjustment Project. We received 5 bids on this. Recommendation is to award the base bid plus alternate 1 in the amount of $56,927 to Highmark, Inc.
Motion by Peterson, second by Roberts to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
48 is the Hofer Avenue overlay project. We received 3 bids on this. Recommendation is to award the base bid plus alternate 1 to J&J Asphalt Company in the amount of $197,192.20.
We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. 49.
Item 49 is the Perrin Drainage Outfall Element 8 project. We received 6 bids on this project. Recommendation is to award the total bid to RCS Construction, Inc. in the amount of $214,960.
We have a motion by Roberts and a second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Next item is the East Idaho and Ivy Water Main Reconstruction Project. We received 5 bids on this project. Recommendation is to award to Mainline Contracting, Inc. in the amount of $472,995.50.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Item number 51 is for Liquid Road De-icer for the street division. We only received 1 bid on this item. Recommendation is to award the total bid in the amount of $13,000 to Envirotech Services.
Motion by Peterson, second by Wright. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Item 52 is for ice sanding material. We received 1 bid on this item as well. Recommendation is to award to Pete Lean & Sons in the amount of $77,500.
Motion by Peterson, second by Wright. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. And we have 1 abstention from Amanda Scott.
Item number 53 is for snow removal operations for the city parking lot number 4. We received 1 bid on this. Recommendation is to award to G.J. Holsworth & Son in the amount of $400 and $656 depending on the snow event.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Number 54 is for snow removal operations for lot number 5. Again, just 1 bid. Recommendation is to award to G.J. Holsworth in the amount of $640 and $938 per event, depending on the event.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Item 55 is for snow removal at lot number 6-2, which is the ramp. Recommendation is to award to the sole bid company in the amount of $200 per hour to G.J. Holsworth.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
56 is snow removal for lot number 7. G.J. Holsworth was the sole bidder again. Recommendation is to award to them in the amount of $428 and $563 per snow event.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Number 57 is for snow removal at lot number 8. Again, G.J. Holsworth is the sole bidder. Recommendation is to award in the amount of $306 and $400 per snow event.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Number 58 is snow removal for lot number 9. Recommendation is to award to G.J. Holsworth the amount of $213 and $438 per snow event.
Motion by Peterson, second by Lewis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
And the final bid tonight is for operated equipment rental for the street snow removal operations, and the recommendation is to award the bid to those on the list for the hourly rates stated.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 59A, confirmation of appointment of Jeff Biegler as Director of Parks and Recreation effective December 1, 2012. We have a motion by Peterson and a second by Lewis. Any discussion? Jeff is here tonight, so if anybody has any questions. Jeff, would you like to say a few words or introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Biegler, I think I've met most of you, and you've had a chance to talk to me a little bit, and I do appreciate all of the support that you've shown to me during this process, and I look forward to returning to my hometown and beginning to serve the community as the new Director of Parks and Recreation. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
We'll first go to Chad Lewis.
After watching this tonight, are you sure you still want the job?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for accepting the job. I was part of the interview process, and I think Rapid City is very lucky to have you, and I look forward to working with you. So congratulations.
Thank you, Chad. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next order of business is to administer the oath of office.
Please raise your right hand. I
Jeffrey Bigler,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota
and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or for the purpose of evasion,
or for the purpose of evasion,
that I will faithfully and impartially perform
that I will faithfully and impartially perform
the duties of the Office of Parks and Recreation Director
the duties of the Office of Parks and Recreation Director
within the Office of the Parks and Recreation Department, Rapid City, South Dakota,
within the Office of the Parks and Recreation Department, Rapid City, South Dakota,
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability,
and to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God. Thank you.
Item number 59C, traffic issue, Corral Drive. Go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just was, I have a child that attends Corral Drive School, so I have a lot of opportunity to interact with the various parents that are in the parking lot in the morning or up in front of the school in the morning and in the afternoon. And it's been brought to my attention through my own experience and through obviously a lot of parents talking to me. There's just kind of speaking of traffic issues, an issue where they've rerouted the traffic coming north on Park Drive, if I'm correct on that, turning into the area. There's a parking lot there for teachers, and a lot of the kindergarten and first grade parents pull into that parking lot to drop their children off there and then go out, exit that way. And the way the traffic's been routed now, trying to explain this without a map is kind of difficult, but if you can imagine yourself heading north on Park Drive, there's a turn lane to turn into that parking lot where the buses go now currently. It's now the back of the school, which used to be the front of the school. And the staff has gone out and striped off the turn lane heading south towards Corral Drive. So you're not supposed to be in that lane. It's been striped off as yellow lane. But what happens is people are exiting from dropping their children off in front of Southwest School, and they come out and they turn south on Park Drive back towards Corral Drive, and they start queuing up immediately, and they get in the turn lane so they can turn left and go down Corral Drive and back on Sheridan Lake Road. And the problem we have is people basically are head-on. Traffic's heading right towards each other. We have the people trying to turn into the parking lot and the teachers as well, as I'm sure Mr. Davis's wife will tell you. They're trying to turn into the parking lot to park, and you have those people coming out of Southwest School that are trying to head south and get on, and they immediately queue up and they get in that turning lane that's been clearly marked, not supposed to be there. It's yellow line, everything else. But of course, we all know how effective those are. And so you end up with just a situation where I've heard a couple choice words expressed to me just for being in the turning lane, which I have the legal right to be in, because people are trying to head south, and it's a road rage and or head-on collision waiting to happen. And I just was wondering if there's any way, I don't know if it's an enforcement issue, if it's a public works issue, but I was been asked by so many people to bring it forth that I thought it was probably at least worth a mention up here if there's something we can do. I realize it's probably not anything the city's done. I know it's part of the reconstruction process over there at Corral Drive. I know there's growing pains, and I know they're doing their best as well. I don't know if there's some sort of direction we can ask for to maybe pursue with the school district. I don't know if anybody has any ideas.
We'll go to our Assistant Chief of Police, Carl Jageris.
I would offer to coordinate a meeting between law enforcement and traffic engineering to review the circumstances that you're presenting and see if we can brainstorm a solution and get back to you.
I would really appreciate that. I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of parents, and I'm sure teachers at Corral Drive. It's kind of frustrating, and I know there's everybody. It's early in the morning. We all haven't had our coffee, and so there's some issues. Everybody's trying to drop it off and get to school fast, and so I don't think of anything malicious out of it. I just want to make sure we can try to coordinate something best for the public. So thank you very much for your time.
Welcome. Thank you. We'll go to Charity Doyle.
I'd like to make a motion to acknowledge.
We have a motion by Doyle to acknowledge and a second by John Roberts. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on items 60 through 64. Can we have a motion to open public hearing? We have a motion by Doyle, second by Scott. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The public comment period is now open. We do have just one speaker request form. This is on item 61 from Janet Smith. Janet?
I live at 240 St. Francis. My property ended up on an assessment list, but it was never delivered with a bill for the property. Apparently, the post office has failed in its ability to forward my mail, and even though everybody else in the county and city can find my address, my bill didn't get to me, and now it's got an extra $100 attached to it. I would request that I just be able to pay the original bill, with $182, and not end up with a lien on my property. Thank you.
Okay, we do not have any further speaker request forms. Do we have a motion to close public comment? We have a motion and a second to close public comment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Items 60 and 61 are consent items. Assuming we'll want 61 pulled. Okay, do we have a motion to approve 60?
So moved.
We have a motion by Peterson and a second by Scott to approve 60. Any discussion on item 60? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 61, Jerry, can you read this into the record for us?
This is resolution number 2012-100B, levying assessment for cleanup of miscellaneous property. And I yield the floor for a motion.
Charity Doyle. Charity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make the motion to approve the item with the exception of removing Janet Smith from the assessment roll.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Doyle and a second by Wright to approve the assessment roll and remove the assessment for Janet Smith altogether. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to share with my colleagues that I have seen mail. The mail forwarding should be active. The county does know where to get a hold of her. I've seen the mail since this time and before that time of the bill being sent out, as well as the city. So it is, I think, one of these times where something just slipped through the cracks. Everybody's pointing a finger at everybody else. And I think if the shoes, or if the roles were reversed, we would sure appreciate the same consideration. So.
Go to our Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that per state statute, we have to mail all notices to the address on record at the courthouse. And we've checked as recently as today, and they still have the old address on there, the old P.O. box. And so according to current state law, that's where I would still have to send it, even if I were going to send a notice today.
Go ahead.
Pauline, just wanted to say I understand that, and I think this, again, is one of those honest glitches because a different department within the county knows how to get a hold of her. I don't know why that's not reconciled. So I'm not saying somebody didn't do their job. I'm just saying that I think it'd be the right thing to do, and recognizing that this is one of those issues. We didn't cause it, she didn't cause it. So extend that consideration to her is all I'm asking.
Thank you, and I appreciate those comments because I just wanted to make it clear that we followed what we were supposed to follow, and if we have a bad address from the county, there's not anything that we can do, even though in our water system she gets the bill to the right address, because that's not something that we can cross-reference as far as what state statute says.
We'll go to John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want a little clarification. Ms. Doyle, you'd want to completely take this all off? Is that what you just said? Or do you?
Oh, no, Janet Smith has no problem paying the bill. It's the $100 fee.
Oh, you didn't clarify that.
Okay.
I thought, so I just think we need to clarify that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So that's hopefully clarifying. She's willing to pay the bill.
And I
that
know
she
that.
didn't
I know that,
time.
but the way it sounded like you wanted to just get rid of it all, just not the $100 fee.
No, just taking her off of the assessment roll.
Okay.
So it's not a lien against her property.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Charlene, you understand the motion? Okay. Go to Bonnie Peterson. Bonnie?
I didn't know we had
Okay.
a motion.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Charlene, would you restate the motion? Oh, sorry.
Motion is to approve the resolution 2012-100B with the exception of the assessment to Janet Smith, which is to be removed from the assessment roll with the understanding that Smith will pay the base assessment for the mowing.
Okay, very good. We'll go to Pauline Sumption.
I'm good if that truly is the motion. I just need to know from my end how much to expect to be paid, so thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 62. Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance 5843, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Bypass Development LLC for a rezoning from light industrial district to heavy industrial district for property generally described as being located at the current northern terminus of Reardon Court. And I make a motion to approve in conjunction with the plan development designation.
Motion by Scott, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 63, Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance 5862, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Dream Design International, Inc., for a rezoning from mobile home residential district to light industrial district for property generally described as being located approximately 3,000 feet north of Seeger Drive along the east side of Dias Avenue, and I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 64.
Second reading, ordinance 5863, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Dream Design International, Inc., for a rezoning from general agricultural district to light industrial district for property generally described as being located approximately 3,000 feet north of Seeger Drive and approximately 1,300 feet east of Dias Avenue, and I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Scott, second by Lewis to approve item 64. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Bill list.
The bill list is that which is before you at $5,496,020.59.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We have a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by several to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Discussion.
Thank you, everyone.